Welcome to Some Stutter.
Newfoundland Labrador's first podcast.
It's about communicating differently. I'm Laura.
I'm Greg.
I'm Paul.
It's interesting. When I was thinking about our meeting this morning to talk about the Daniel Allen Cox conversation, the parable of the prodigal son came to mind. Do you both know that? The parable of the prodigal son. I mean, I mean, this is for those listeners who are not familiar. The son of a father took his inheritance, and he left the family and squandered his inheritance, and he was completely broke, and so he actually decided to come back to his family. So instead of the father shunning him, he embraced him, and he said, "My son has been lost. Now he's home, and so kill the fatted calf. And we will celebrate. He is lost and he is home." That reminded me of the journey that Daniel Allen Cox had. That he actually came back home after his challenges with his lived experiences to himself. He came home to himself and to his authentic self.
Right, yeah. Yeah, you've been doing some thinking on the theme of his journey, and so what we're going to hear from today is the second half of Daniel's interview with Greg, and he'll talk a little bit more about that journey as a person who stutters, as a writer who stutters, and as a writer who stutters who recorded his own, or who voiced his audiobook. And it's interesting to listen to Daniel talk about some of the editorial decisions and design decisions that went into the creation of the audiobook. So we'll get to that interview now, and we'll come back and have a chat about some of the stuff that he was talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, this. Daniel, this leads into my next question. When you write in your book about disassociating from the Jehovah's Witnesses, you use words such as departing from anything is a lifelong goodbye. Not all Jehovah's Witnesses define in and out so clearly. How someone fades in and out, that fellow apostates find themselves in various states of leaving, etc. Can you elaborate on this?
Sure. Like every congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses has a different culture, and a culture is defined by who the elders happen to be. Some of them are extremely hardcore with the rules. Others are a bit more forgiving or lax, And I sometimes hear about witnesses who drift out and drift in and drift out and drift in without ever being formally kicked out or ever having formally left. So that's not the experience I had, right? For me, it was a very black and white thing. It's like, oh, you're gay? Well, then make a choice. Leave or we kick you out. But I know a lot of other witnesses who just kind of leave and come back. So they have a kind of a danger which I never had, which was it's this like insidious way to pull you back in, right? Using a very long leash, right? Whereas with me, it was a very it was a very tight leash, but with others it's a long leash. And so I kind of wanted to address in my book the aspect that we all leave in different ways, and we all kind of like return in different ways. Arguably, I've returned to the scene of the crime in a very intense way to write the book, which meant actually reading months and months of Watchtower literature when I swore I would never touch it again. There I was, back online, reading all the articles, reading all the books, um, and listening to all the music, right? Which was important. Music is a very important part of my story, and so exposing myself again to that. And so it's there is no in or out, right? When we're talking about psychology or indoctrination, right? So I wanted to make that distinction clear.
Thank you. Daniel, you mentioned earlier about like language, language and vocabulary, how certain groups, such as the Jehovah's Witnesses, uses to manipulate people, who are vulnerable, and you also reference the language used by AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Anonymous. Do you want to elaborate a little more of how language, vocabulary can be used to manipulate people's mental health and mindset?
Sure, yes. So I believe you're referring to a chapter where I talk about alcohol recovery. Yeah, there's a chapter
Correct.
where I discuss my own like relationship to substances, and I was never in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I will probably never be. There are certain patterns of theirs which I noticed um, are very religiously inclined, especially their language. And so, like the 12 steps and the 12 traditions um, um, evoke a very Christian aesthetic, right? And it's all about relying on higher forces, on powers greater than we are. And the point like I kind of make in the chapter is like, how does that sentiment make people feel who have left groups who say you have no personal agency or power unless it's through God, and you must rely on higher power? What about those of us who have like rejected higher powers? We need a place to get recovery, to get support, to get mental health supports that's absent of this kind of religious language, especially if that's the background that we're fleeing from, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, Daniel, as a person who stutters now, you've gone through through a lot of challenges throughout your live, lived experience. Do you feel that that your stuttering has 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 added another emotional and psychological layer to your struggles over the years?
It has actually, and I'd say like in mostly good ways. And so now my speech has become part of the story. It's become part of the story. Like I talk about the story I write about, and it's also influenced um, the ways in which people work with me. So towards the beginning of my writing career, I refused to read from my books publicly. Um, so when my first book came out, I was invited to literary festivals, and then rather than get up on the platform or podium and read myself, I would ask friends to read for me, and this really perplexed a lot of people, especially those in the audience. It perplexed the organizers who invited me, um, and it left some people feeling that they weren't getting any of me, right? Um,
Mm.
so a friend took me aside. He is a very cherished friend, a writer, Francisco Banez Carrasco. Uh, it was on his doorstep. I was actually visiting him in Vancouver, and just before I left, he held onto my elbow, and then I turned around. He said, people people want to hear your voice. Um, and his message was about authenticity. And so, in writing, I've discovered people want authenticity. And
Mm-hmm.
there I was thinking, oh no, why would you want to listen to someone stutter for 20 minutes on stage when I can get a perfectly, fluent friend? And here's a word I don't really use anymore, right? Fluency, right? But at the time, I was like, well, why should I be the one who do that? Here's a
Mm.
professional reader, someone who can do it without a stutter. And that was the exact opposite of Francisco's point, which was no, they want to hear your voice, hear your stutter, because in your stutter, that's where the truth is, right? So I internalized that. I gradually accepted that, and then I started to do my own public readings, and this all came again to a head, Greg, when I did the audiobook for my for I felt the end before it came. So um, I was asked if I wanted to be the audiobook's narrator, and I said me, so I had all those old fears again. I'm not a professional audiobook narrator. I can't do this. But then I realized it was a chance to voice things in my own way, and so I accepted it. I got the job. I auditioned, got the job to narrate my own life, and and it went super well. And not only that, but the producers of the audiobook um, kind of modified their editing techniques to leave the stutters in, right? Because sometimes they would have habits to make sure that every sentence is like a smooth one, right? Without hesitations or blips or repeated words or blocks. But then when I came into the studio, they realized that they had a bit of a different animal on their hands,
Mm.
and my stutter challenged them to edit the audio clips in different ways, and yeah, and so now I'm proud I produced an audiobook that has my authentic voice in it.
Mm. Wonderful, Daniel. Now, Daniel, in your title, you use the term queer. Now, queer. Remember, at one time, queer used to have queer used to be a derogatory term,
Yep.
and people went from gay. I mean, people use gay, but they're trying to empower queer more. I mean, just bring the just to make. I mean, to make the term more comforting, more powerful. And so,
Mm-hmm.
so why did you use it as opposed to gay or?
Yes, I've been using it now for a good 15 years at least, right? Um, Gay is never really fit me, right? Because my partner, for example, is I have two partners. One is a cis male, and one is non-binary, and so um, the word gay is a very limiting term I find to describe me. Also, I love queer. I love its past as a term used against us. I love its political agency, right? Because we are all trying, I think, in some way to affect change, And also, I love how queer can be used as a verb to queer something, and that's what I've been trying to do with my art forms and my writing forms for like a number of years now.
Great. Now, your book cover picture taken by the photographer Stanley Stella is beautiful, Danielle. It really is beautiful. And this this is where your book title, I felt the end before it came, memoirs of a queer ex-Jehovah's witness, or originated from. Can you share a little bit about this story? Because I mean the picture is fabulous, as well as I also love the name of your book.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have stories for both of that actually. So yeah, when I was in New York in the '90s, I started doing nude modeling for like a bunch of photographers, and one of them soon became very special to me, and that was Stanley. Stanley had a way of disarming me and also making me very comfortable in my own skin, and also getting me to talk about myself. Right, as he shot still photos, he would just ask me like about my day or my week, and get me to tell him stories. And so he would point to my shoes and say, "Wow, why are your shoes so dirty?" I'm like, "Well, because I've been walking all around." It's like, "Well, where'd you go?" And so then I would tell him about my adventures in New York, everything that led me there and led me to the studio of his in Tribeca. And in getting me to talk about myself, I think Stanley, in some way, kickstarted the memoirs to me, right? So it got me to frame things in a way that actually he'd framed them. And so for like a long time now, Greg, I've always wanted one of his images on the cover. And so when my editor actually asked him uh, if we could use that picture that's now on the cover, he said yes, and I was overjoyed. Uh, and the title also works with that as well. So the title is also the doing of my editor David, who picked it out of a line in the book. Right, he found the line and said, "Hey, what about this as your title?" And as soon as he said it, I knew it was it. Right, and so I have him to thank for those two things.
Wonderful, Danielle. Now, at the end of your book, you so eloquently described your departure from New York. You started to sell your photos of your modeling photos, and you said it was like leaving everything behind a kind of a burial. As as a reader, I felt that you sort of made it sound like like a resurrection, and from the old to a new beginning. Well, where are you now with all this? I mean, the anger. Have you found some peace of mind, reconciliation with within?
Yes, I totally have, Greg. The anger, even before I wrote the book, the anger had actually transformed into something else, oftentimes into humor, um, and so accessing humor and yeah, the unusual nature of like how I grew up leads itself to tons of jokes, um, and just um, the ludicrous nature of it, I find, um, leads to the humor, and I think um, if if there was any anger left, finding solidarity with other people who'd been through similar things uh, was what led me transform it into art or transform it into writing. Right. Um, uh, it couldn't just be me um, talking about experience. It had to be framing it, I think, in like a larger context. Um, Framing it in the question, the larger umbrella question: what is a coercive control? Um, where are all the places it can manifest? It's not just in religion; it's at work, it's at school, it's in the corporate culture. Earlier, you, you've asked me a question I had never really answered. I realized, which was, what's the difference between um, cult and cultish? And there's a book called Cultish by Amanda Montell that explains how like a lot of different groups use cultish language, like MLMs, right, or even fitness clubs, pyramid schemes, political groups, and so like a lot of different types of groups have taken from the Jehovah's Witness playbook, have taken from the Mormon playbook, um, have taken from the Children of God playbook to to control their followers, to control their customers. Now cultish control has become part of the capitalist project, right? We all have to rah rah rah, our corporate overlords, right? And so yeah, it's become part of it. It's all the same techniques, right? It's either you're on board or you're not, right? Um, so part of releasing the anger has been to step back from myself and to look at it from like a wider perspective.
Wonderful. Now, I'm wondering now, Daniel. Now, what is next for for Daniel Allen Cox moving forward? What's next now?
Well, now I'm still touring my book, which is going on 2 years, and so it's uh, it's still alive. People are discovering it like in new ways, thanks to you, of course, and thanks to others. I love how the Maritimes has embraced this book and been very very kind and warm to me. Like I was like in Nova Scotia last year. This year I was in New Brunswick. Um, I've been to Newfoundland, but not to do any book events, and so I can't wait until that happens eventually. Um, there are just some fantastic conversations around all of this uh, happening in the Maritimes, and it's a place I haven't visited, I think, before 2 or 3 years ago, and so now this is my new place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So ongoing touring, ongoing writing, more nonfiction, um, more fiction eventually as well, right? And so I need to eventually uh, come back into the world of novel writing with all of the insight I've gained, and also with now like a bit of a distance between now and my past novels.
Wonderful to hear, Daniel. Now, as someone that has experienced uh, so much darkness in life, do do you realize that that you are are an accomplishment? Do you recognize all of your accomplishments in life? I feel that that anyone who has read your book will definitely recognize your will for survival as as an accomplishment. Yet what's paramount in importance is that you feel that you are an accomplishment within. What are your thoughts?
Well, those are very kind things, Greg. I appreciate all of that. Um, for me, it's important to feel like I'm always learning, right? Learning how to be a better person, a better brother, a better son, better friend and partner. And so like a project like this, I think actually helps me do that. Um, I also want to be a better writer as well, and learn how to advocate for people, learn how to further merge um, writing with my activism, right? Um, so I think if I feel accomplished, it's in getting the skills to do the next thing in the way like I want to do it, right? Um, and yeah, writing is a process. Writing careers can be short, or they can be very long. At the moment, mine is trending towards the long side, and so um, it's now kind of like a responsibility of mine to imagine what is next in 2 or 3 books from now, how that looks, uh, how this current book will be received in the future, and how it fits into my path. So it's just a really beautiful place to be, to be held and to be welcomed by so many people, and I try to do the same thing for other writers, either if I'm mentoring them, if I'm writing about their work, or if I'm trying to support debut writers with their first books, or things like that. And so it's all part of the mix. I'm also trying to improve my French, and to I'm not sure if I'll be writing in French, but like at least to interact more with the francophone writing communities.
Wonderful. That's great. Daniel, our time is up, and but as I mentioned earlier, I have lots and lots more questions for you. But we'll need to bring you back for a part two, if not a part three conversation. Now, do you have any last words to say about your book? Just to, just to give more of a shout out, because as as I mentioned earlier, your book is a must-read, if not a reread book, definitely. So, any last words?
Not really about the book, but I just want to thank you for such a terrific podcast and all the range that you've had on it in terms of who who you've invited, what you've covered. I think it does a fantastic service and brings a voice for communicating differently that we don't often hear and rarely hear. And so I just want to thank you and everyone on the podcast for what you've done here.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. So again, thank thank you very much for for taking the time, to have this conversation today. Okay, but we'll try it again for sure.
And now we're back. We had a chance to listen to the rest of Daniel's interview with Greg, and I was thinking about his journey, and he's done a remarkable amount of self work, work on who he is as a person who stutters and as a writer. Greg, do you know where he is now? Like what he's doing after post writing his book?
Well, you see, Paul, this is the next step, because I'm going to be inviting Daniel to come back for part 2 conversation and just see where he is now since he left New York, because he actually left his old life behind, and so he had reached a point to sort of leave behind all of his I guess challenges with struggling with the being shunned. His struggles with alcoholism, modeling, hustling. But anyhow, so I'm curious to see where he is now. But I'm pleased to inform the listeners that I was at a Canadian Stuttering conference 2 weeks ago, and much to my surprise, Daniel gave a workshop, and the workshop was called "Jamming the Single: Navigating Writing and Publishing as a Person Who Stutters." It was a really informative workshop, so I'll be delving more into where he is now. He is also starting to edit other people's books for them, so I think his lived journey has brought him to a full sense of living a more productive and involved life.
Mm-hmm,
Minus
sure.
all.
It sounds like he's really taken that early experience with stuttering and run with it, like in such a positive way.
Yeah.
And that's it for today's episode. Laura, do you want to remind everybody what they can do with their mouse clicks and subscription urges?
Okay. I'd love to. Anyone who wants to should absolutely follow their subscription urge. I've heard that there's no possible way that you could hold your hand in the air and click the subscribe button. Do you think that's true? Try it out and let me know. That's a joke, obviously, but you should absolutely like, share, subscribe to the podcast. Let people you know hear about it, because all of those things are going to be what helps us get our information out there to the next person who might be struggling alone. They might feel like they're in the dark, and let's help shed a little bit of light, because there's a fabulous community of support out there for stutterers, and the more we can help it grow, the more fabulous it'll be.
And also, Some Stutter Law is always looking for guests, so if anyone of our listeners wanted to come and share their stories and have a conversation about something that's on their mind, a topic, just feel free to contact us.
Absolutely. And what's the info, Greg?
The info, Paul, what's the info?
Our email address is info@somestutterlaw.ca. And
okay.
Our website is Some Stutter Law. Law is spelled L-U-H, somestutterlaw.ca.
And you can leave a comment on a video if you are watching on YouTube or on Spotify. I believe you can leave a comment as well. I shouldn't say the believe part, but I'm assuming you can leave a comment on Spotify, Paul?
I think you can, yeah. We're
contact through any of the social media. Contact us through any social media where you're finding this that you're listening to right now. We'd love for anyone to reach out. If you want to be a guest, let us know. If you just want to let us know about a topic that you'd like to hear, or someone that you're hoping to hear us interview, we'd also be happy to hear that too.